Welcome to Protea Conversations, the podcast where leadership in business and accounting isn't just discussed, it's explored. I'm your host, Zane Stevens, and thank you for joining me as we delve into the minds of some of the most influential leaders in the industry. Our journey is one of discovery, from unraveling the unique stories that shaped our guests' careers to the invaluable advice that fueled their success. We're here to provide you with simple, actionable advice to accelerate your career and personal growth. Whether you're a budding professional or a seasoned executive, these conversations are designed to offer insights and perspectives that resonate with everyone. So tune in, engage, and be inspired as we build better leaders together. Welcome to Protea Conversations. Today we're joined by Roman Villard, the founder of Full Send Finance. Roman's journey in the world of finance is both unique and inspiring. With over a decade of experience as a CPA, Roman has deep-rooted passion for startups, venture capital, golf, and Formula One. His diverse interests and fluency in French, attribute to his family's origins in France, add depth to his professional persona. Before embarking on the entrepreneurial path with Full Send Finance, Roman carved a niche for himself in the accounting world, embracing the challenges and rewards of startup ecosystem. His commitment to fostering meaningful connections in the venture community and providing seed stage advisory that has been instrumental in his success. Roman's uncommon journey to founding Full Send Finance is a testament to his belief in taking unconventional paths to achieve greatness. Please join me in welcoming the dynamic and innovative Roman to Protea Conversations. Roman, it's a pleasure to have you here. One of the nicest people in the accounting space, puts up with us B-level guys like myself in the most kind, polite way, and it's really inspirational to see what you're being able to do with media on LinkedIn and other platforms, and a true inspiration. So thank you for joining me today.
Boy, that introduction, I don't know if I'll be able to live up to today, but very appreciative of all the kind words and excited to have this conversation with you, Zane.
It probably undersells you, which is the scary part of it. When I read it, I was like, I got some help from some AI to make my work sound a little bit better and use better adjectives. And I was reading it and going, that probably isn't enough to explain how special Roman actually is. And I've been super impressed. I mean, we probably connected less than a year ago at this point. We obviously got to meet very briefly in person, which was one of my highlights of QuickBooks Connect last year. And honestly, the conversations we've had the one-on-one together, just been really inspirational. And you're such a smart person that's willing to share and do it in such a nice, kind way. It's really impressive.
Again, I don't know how I'm going to live up to that, but I firmly believe that transparency in a lot of ways of your journey as an entrepreneur, as a leader, and just sharing experiences with others and relating to others through those is really powerful. And so I'm fortunate to have met a lot of great people like yourself, both in person and digitally through forums like LinkedIn. Man, it's like I'm continually inspired by everybody that I've had a chance to connect with. So I can't give credit to anybody, you and all the others that I've gained inspiration from.
Well, just keep up the good work. And today we'll take a bit of an opportunity to learn a little bit more about who you are as a person, where you came from, and then we'll dig into Full Send Finance, which, and the story behind it. And there's a lot to dig into there, but I'd like to sort of learn, like, where did it begin? How did you come to the idea that the world of accounting is for me?
Boy, let's go back to college, where I was originally a business management major and had very little direction in my life. I switched over to finance because I thought I could make more money. And then at the end of my junior year at university, one of my accounting professors said, listen, if you do finance, you can really only do finance in your career. If you do accounting, you can do anything. And when he said that, it really clicked with me that every single company on planet Earth requires some form of accounting. And so I switched my major senior year, and it's not that I was like really drawn to accounting or really proficient at accounting, but rather it could open up doors that I didn't even know existed, and that certainly has proven to be true. So that was the origin story of how I got into accounting.
And I think it's that's a pretty unique story. I feel like a lot of people go into accounting and then, either veer off some other direction or stay in accounting. There's not a lot of people that are like, I started somewhere else and I just thought, okay, that sounds like fun. Like, it feels like a great opportunity. I'll take it. I mean, you gave us the short story, but like, what was going through your head at that time? Like, Did nobody tell you that accounting is difficult?
Nobody told me that coming out of university and into the job field that my options would be limited to really two different verticals, one being audit and two being tax. I didn't know that the entire public accounting, public versus private world existed. Coming out of school and going to career fairs, it was like, here are the four firms that you can choose to work at. You can either choose accounting or audit or tax. It didn't click until that point that, wow, like it feels way more narrow than it was actually explained to me. And it wasn't until actually like developing relationships with individuals in industry that I understood how and why public is the way it is, and how ultimately it became a really good foundation for a longer, more diverse career.
Interesting. So how did you make the decision to go the audit route rather than the tax route?
It was pretty simple for me. I kind of bring it back to I like people. I like people then. I still like them now, and I was more extroverted. And my perception of audit versus tax was that audit was in person, in front of the client, and tax was behind a desk, just waiting for responses from a client, and it wasn't very outgoing. And so, because I desired more of that in-person client communication and relationship, it just felt like audit was a natural path. I've come to learn that tax folks are very adept at having client relationships as well. So that was a misconception that I had, but that's how I ended up in audit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Back in South Africa, where I sort of started my career, it really was just audit was your only real option. And I didn't even know what that meant. I was just like, cool, send me off. Let's go do it. Was that sort of your experience as well when you first down the job? Like you maybe thought you knew what you're doing, but not really. You just thought like, we'll figure it out as we go along.
I won't hold back on this one. I had no idea what I was doing, like zero clue. And they throw me onto a client, and I'm just sitting there like, I guess I'll follow what they did last year because I've got this audit workbook and I can see exactly what happened last year. Fast forward a few years, staff, seniors, managers continue just to do what they did last year, and there wasn't a lot of creativity in that. I was surrounded by a really great team and did learn a lot in that first year, but I was heavily dependent upon those above me to help train and educate me on what an audit was and how to go through the rhythms of that procedure.
You stuck with it for quite a while. I mean, it's not like your audit career was a short one. So something must have drawn you to the space.
Yeah. So, gosh, I spent maybe 5 more years in audit than I maybe should have. But I will say I was surrounded by incredible people. I had such great relationships with the folks that I worked with at a regional firm out of Dallas for many years. I then transitioned to a firm in Denver at Crowe Horwath, a national-based firm. And at that point, I was able to step into very nascent industries. My industry verticals at the time were cryptocurrency and cannabis in 2017 and 18. And so it was really the opportunity to step into a new industry that there wasn't a lot of guidance around that kept me engaged, because it required creativity, it required research, it required me to step outside of my comfortability. And it was those types of activities within the realm of public that kept me engaged for as long as I was in public.
And was that the reason you moved to a different state, or was there another sort of emphasis between moving from Texas to Colorado?
Yeah, so the move was actually precipitated by my wife's opportunity for a role in working at a startup. And so she was working for an early stage startup in Denver, brought our family up to Colorado, and I was like, I can get a job at a firm. And so I ended up working at Crowe Horwath and transitioning to a larger firm at that point in time.
And I mean, you were at Baker Tilly before, so it wasn't a small firm by any means, but it is definitely a step up in size and probably a fairly different experience.
Yeah, so when I was at the Dallas firm, it was a firm called MCG, or Montgomery Kaushik Greilich, that was then acquired by Baker Tilly. And so it still was really that small firm, regional firm approach where you knew everybody on the audit team, and it kind of felt like this team all working together, moving the same direction, and busy season, like you're grinding it out together. So we got a lot more of the small firm dynamic, which I love that. I wanted to work with a smaller team, with clients that I could see a balance sheet, an audit from beginning to end, and not just get siloed and pigeonholed into a big 4 client working on accounts receivable for 4 years. Like that did not seem very exciting to me.
Yeah, You can't underemphasize how important that is. I mean, I spent 4 years at KPMG, but the first 2 years were all from my home office in Port Elizabeth, which is like the fifth or sixth biggest city in South Africa. But we knew everybody. You knew everybody in the whole office, right? Your department, every other department. And when I moved, did a lot of work for the Johannesburg office and then eventually moved to the Cape Town office, like I didn't talk to anybody outside my team other than IT support. And, you go from this environment of knowing everybody to knowing a few people. And it does change your experience in the audit world when you're all of a sudden your world gets really, really tiny and really, really narrow. For me, like there were a lot of people like, oh, I love being in the big office. I love just auditing bank for a couple of years. For me, that didn't really excite me. And it feels like that's potentially something, sort of the feeling that you had with the change. You obviously changed firms where I changed cities.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. In going to work with MCG in Dallas at a regional firm, I was afforded the opportunity to see an audit from beginning to end, from initial interim procedures all the way through report issuance. And I was involved as an associate in every step in that process. And so I took that experience and related that to colleagues and friends that I had in Big Four. And the example I often use is that number of friends went to go work for a Big Four company working on Walmart's audits. And they were stuck and working on Walmart's accounts receivable for 4 years. And you know what they got really proficient at is Walmart's accounts receivable. And I'm happy for them that they learned that. And that was a great path for them. But I would not have thrived in that environment.
I wish there was a way for people to understand that when they're getting into their career, because it feels like people make decisions and then they just choose them up and spits them out. And we're losing accountants because they don't quite understand what they're getting into when they're going to different firms. And I think sometimes, if it could be better laid out for people and people better understood who they were, like they would probably might be keeping a few more people, in the profession, specifically audit or tax, and doing that type of work for a longer period of time if they knew what they were in for and what they probably would prefer.
Totally agree with that. And I think there's a variety of factors that could improve the retention aspect of employees' pay being a big factor in that. But also, I think large firms have had a really difficult time understanding how to navigate into a world where we can effectively utilize technology and the technology advancements and also resourcing individuals into roles that they want to pursue. There's not a lot of lateral mobility to allow individuals to move into the space and industry and type of work that they personally feel more connected to, nor do employees really feel the capability to voice that. And that they'll actually be heard by their firms. And so that's a big nebulous idea, but at the same time, I feel like there's something around providing a little bit more lateral mobility to employees to allow them to explore the things that get them excited.
Well, you got that opportunity to find out what things make you excited. You obviously then took up that bigger opportunity based on an opportunity for your wife, which is always fantastic. But that didn't last too long, and you moved on to the next step in your journey. Can you tell us sort of about that next step and what was the decision to make that move from an audit manager through to the title of VP of Business Development?
When you read it like that, it just doesn't linearly connect. It doesn't make sense. And so fortunately, I had the decision made for me. I was offered a controller position for a cryptocurrency client that I worked on, and I went through all the appropriate channels to make the firm aware of what I was doing. And I got a call one day from corporate counsel of that cryptocurrency company, and they said, "Hey, we received a call from a partner out of a New York office that says we're going to enforce a non-solicit clause on us hiring you," which brought a lot of confusion to me because I'd never met a partner out of the New York office. Was very unaware of what they were doing. Ultimately, they revoked the offer, and I walked into my partner's office in the Denver location and said, "Hey, today's my last day. I can't work in an environment where you're going to do this to people." And they wanted me to stay on, but ultimately I had the luxury of going home and telling my wife that I lost 2 jobs in one day and not just one, which was very, very emotionally challenging for me to overcome and understand at that point in time. But it was the absolute best thing that could have happened, as I then had the opportunity to leverage my relationships and network that led to an opportunity with a consulting firm based out of Dallas called Embark. They were a small firm at the time, and when I applied for a consultant role, to which they said, "Have you thought about business development?" I was like, absolutely not. And they said, how about you think about it? Here's an offer for a business development role. And that offer was a $0 based salary and 100% activity and commission based pay. And my wife was like, go for it. You do great. And so I ended up in a business development role for an accounting advisory firm based out of Dallas, helping build their Denver office.
There is so much that you just shared there that it's a little overwhelming because I mostly want to like go straight into a long rant about the not like your partner, but this is probably not the right space or time or conversation to be having that. But I would say what absolute BS. And I have very strong opinions about those types of situations. And we'll just breathe through that one for a little second. But the next role, one, zero base salary. Like, wow. I mean, I personally know if I would get given that, I would be like, thanks, but no thanks. Like, maybe it's the way they train us accountants in South Africa to be super risk adverse. I just wouldn't have been, I would have said no. There's no ways I would have taken that opportunity. I mean, knowing you as I do, which is not super deeply personal, but your personality and how engaging you are and how you've sold me on stuff just on a regular phone call, I can see how your wife would be like, you'd be great at that. But you're going through a ton of emotions for losing two jobs to this decision where it's not what you're looking for at all. They're just like, we think you could do this, so can you do it? What was the emotion at that point?
It was, let me figure out how I can do this and figure out the way to step into this role and create impact and help build a new office for this company. I was partnering with a regional president that I had gotten to know. And what's ironic about it is my first decision that I made for myself personally within that role was to hire an executive sales coach. And so I personally paid for an executive sales coach to teach me how to accomplish and conquer this role. And it was the best investment I've ever made. And it helped me understand the ins and outs of how to march down the path of being a salesperson. And I had the luxury of knowing and understanding, being able to effectively communicate accounting practices, accounting services, which then translated really naturally in helping educate the market that I was going after on what it is that firm was providing at that point in time. And so it was really nerve-wracking, but that executive sales coach was a massive unlock for me in that transition.
I mean, that's a great move, a very mature move at that point in time, especially because now you're accelerating from zero to negative, which again, emotionally doesn't work very well with me. There's a great lesson in there for anybody, right? If you're trying to learn something new, there's no shame in getting help and asking for help. And sometimes you have to pay for it. Sometimes you can talk to people. But if you really want to do a good job, you need to get the help. And that's incredibly wise move that you made at that point. And that's really, really, really smart. It looks from there on like obviously things must have gone well, right?
They went fairly well. Yeah, for the first year, I think we hired about 13 people, did over $1 million in revenue. I was only there for about 10 months as there were some challenges with management and some very difficult situations to overcome personally in that role. But what that opportunity led to was ultimately working at another firm in a business development capacity and taking those skills and learnings and relationships and helping another firm grow their CFO practice and really help me step more into the CAS world and understanding a level deeper of what accounting services look like, which was awesome.
You did that for a while. Clearly were good at what you're doing, else you wouldn't have lasted for the 3 years that you were there. And I know a lot of people that stay in that business development space can be super successful, but at some point you decided, no, I want to go back to my roots. And we sort of get to the point where full send finance began.
Yeah, it was fascinating because the company that I worked at, the CFO firm out of Boulder, was actively moving up market with a little bit more mature client base, higher monthly rates with clients. And at the same time, I would be receiving these opportunities to work with a little bit smaller companies at lower monthly rates. And I would be passing them off to a lot of partner firms. And I was helping float a lot of other firms. It got to a point where I started to dig a little bit deeper on these firms that I was passing off more bookkeeping and recurring accounting work to. And A, they were all completely full and couldn't take on additional work. And B, I thought what they were doing could probably be accomplished in a little bit more efficient manner. And so I'm like, man, it feels like there's a lot of opportunity there. And ultimately, distancing between where I saw the future of our services going and where the leadership team wanted to go at my last firm kind of led down a path of parting ways and going through a self-discovery process of maybe I should start my own firm.
That is, we've gone audit, changing career after being dismissed twice, run down this path pretty successfully, and then, hey, I know I can do it better, or at least more efficiently. I'm going to give this a go. I'm assuming your wife had full support behind this decision?
I'll start by saying I will admit that my confidence was nowhere near that high. I just thought maybe there's an opportunity to weasel my way into creating something that could successfully serve other businesses really well. And thankfully, you'll see the recurring theme here of my wife supporting us in a move, supporting my transition to business development, encouraging me, and really floating our family as I started full send. We went through about 2 months of in-depth conversation of what would it look like if I were to jump down this entrepreneurial journey. What's the absolute worst case scenario that could happen? What's best case, and what are the starting steps to get going on that? After 2 months of conversation, she signed off on it, and I was off to the races.
So when you got started, were you still working for the previous one? Is there overlap, or did you just cold turkey, let's go?
No, it was a cold turkey break. It was 2 months of me interviewing at firms and really being encouraged by other firm owners to start my own thing. And during that 2 months, it was also understanding how to set up internal operations. What systems should I be looking at? Do I need to set up a QBOA profile? Very basic things that firm owners need to do. And me very naively thinking that I could set up internal operations for a scalable firm in a matter of 2 months. But that's what I was focused on during that interim period.
And that was just over 2 years ago now. So I know it's going well. Tell us about that journey. 2 years, I remember my first 2 years. It wasn't easy.
Yeah, gosh. Do you want me to be positive or honest?
Always honest.
I struggle as the eternal optimist, putting a positive spin on everything I do because I want to continually encourage and uplift other people. But the honest answer is yes, things have gone well. However, it has required a tremendous amount of time, of challenge, of sacrifice, sweat and tears, maybe no blood, but sweat and tears to get to the point where we have a team of 5 now going on 6 here soon. We've got what I would say is a viable firm that's able to move forward without a tremendous amount of capital risk on a month-to-month basis, where for the first year, boy, you were just running on fumes and early mornings and late nights. And I still go through the challenge of wearing many hats and trying to keep everything organized, which is tremendously difficult. But we have a team. I've got a wonderful partner in the business now. And so I've structured things in a way that have really enabled other people to play incredible roles at the firm to help us continue to increase that scalability.
Yeah, I sort of think back on my first few years, and 100-hour weeks were not uncommon during that period of time. Those just happened because there was just stuff to get done. Do you sort of have any of those moments where you look back and you're like, I just don't know how I survived that week?
I wouldn't go that far, no, because I've always been very intentional about trying to ensure that I'm not sacrificing my family time for work. That's always I'm sacrificing sleep or maybe a workout or things personally, which has taken its toll. There's never a point in time where it was that challenging. And parcel because I was able to say no to a few things, a few opportunities that maybe would have put me over the edge. But there were definitely some long weeks, just not that heavy, I think.
Well, that's good. That's a good positive story. And if you're looking for a positive twist, it means you can do it. You can start a firm without absolutely killing yourself, which is important for people to know, because I think sometimes when people look at it, it is tough. If you just start Google how to start an accounting firm and you start reading some blogs, the lists are incredibly long. Half of them, I'm like, really? You have to do that? I didn't do 80% of that, but I guess you have to. So it can be pretty overwhelming. It would seem, though, from everything you've told me so far, what's really been helpful is just having a really good, strong support system. From this conversation, that clearly starts with your wife. I personally have the same luxury that I have a great support system with my wife at home. But can you sort of just share us on the importance of having those relationships and that support system?
Yeah, the importance of having that support system, I think, goes hand in hand with one of the biggest challenges in starting and running an early stage firm, and that's simply you have a very high risk of having the firm and the company and your baby of a company become so much a part of your identity that you almost lose sight of what was important to you before this thing came into your life. And so it's really easy for me to say, oh, I'm full send all day, every day, and think about that and let that consume my thoughts. But the supporting team of my wife and of my kids and of my parents and even the team at Full Send, I believe has really helped keep me grounded in what my priorities are as a husband, as a father, as a son, as a brother. And that will always take precedence over anything I ever do for work. It's an ongoing challenge of making sure that my identity doesn't slip into like all sin, because it's so easy for that to happen because I'm so passionate about it. But having that supporting cast and crew is instrumental in staying grounded and also like encouraging you to continue pursuing the things that you love. And so that has been a massive part of the last 2 years.
That's great. Can you sort of share with us who are those clients that you're serving on a day-to-day basis?
So from a client perspective, it has been interesting as early on, we served a little bit less mature, smaller company demographics, more of the 0 to 1 million in revenue, the pre-seed, seed stage venture capital backed startups, primarily in the technology and e-commerce space. That has swung up market a bit to where now we typically work with that Series A or 10 to 20 million range technology or e-commerce company. And the reason for that is that our internal capabilities and sophistications have improved, and we're able to provide a higher value set or value equation for companies that are more necessitating more complicated solutions to their problems. But it's going to be that technology e-commerce growth business anywhere in the US.
Okay, interesting stuff. That space is always a challenging one because there is a bit of a churn and burn relationship a lot of the time. And, I come to learn about you as well as the conversations that relationships are really important to you. So how do you balance that? I love relationships to this industry where, sometimes relationships, they're obviously important, especially if you're trying to, as these businesses trying to grow, but at times it's just fast paced. We're running. We'll think about this relationships later.
And that's a great question. It's very difficult because relationships are personal, and there's the innate desire to want to increase efficiency and scalability and automation. That's very difficult to do within the context of relationships because people by nature are sticky and flaky and difficult to communicate with. When you think about that, I think relationships by nature kind of precipitate on three things: that people want to feel respected, they want to feel heard, and they want to feel valued. And so to the extent that I'm capable of providing that to our clients, to our team, to our industry partners, I want to do that as intentionally as possible and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to feel heard and I can at least respond to them. And so the capacity for me to scale that part of it has really just been hiring a great team to take on a lot of the work that I was doing on the client-facing side of things. So I think that has unlocked a little bit of capacity to help nurture relationships, but there's no silver bullet to automating relationships. It's challenging.
And, what I've learned is that it can be tricky with these relationships because things are going to go bad at certain clients, right? And one of the things that I had to learn in the beginning is that people are going to go away. And it doesn't matter if they've been with you for 2 months or for, I just had a client that exited now after 9 years. It hurts either way because it is pretty personal what we do with these people. Like they're opening their lives up to us. They're showing like their deepest, darkest secrets to us. And it's one of those things as an accountant, and I'm terrible at relationships generally. I feel for my wife on a daily basis, but you do get very connected to clients, and trying to sort of separate your brain between relationship and like this is just I'm there to help them, and sometimes it's just not going to work out is tough.
It is, and I've got a great example of that. So over the past several weeks, we've been in the process of terminating one of our client relationships, and it's one of our larger clients, and it's been very difficult to manage that. However, throughout this termination process, we've been very proactive in communicating. Here are the ways in which we are capable of engaging with our clients, the way that we communicate processes, the way that we create change and improvement for our clients. And it's just not been that type of relationship that's been conducive to creating that positive change to help them grow. And so even throughout the termination process where we say, hey, at this point in time, we're going to transition our work to another partner or to an internal team member, we've also communicated to them, hey, we want you to succeed. We want you to win. We are on your team. And we want to make sure that whatever we're putting together for that next resource taking over this work is done in a really professional and excellent way to help you succeed. And we'll leave you with a bunch of tips and recommendations that we think will help. Like, we genuinely mean that. We were rooting for their success. And as part of that communication to this client, they said something to the effect of, this is the best breakup I've ever been a part of. And, we never want a client relationship to come to that, but also we want our clients to feel that way, even when it's maybe not the right fit for each of us.
I mean, that is a great story. And, if you can still be professional, kind, do it in a way that everybody feels like they're winning, on the exit, that is such a huge victory. And it is not easy because, especially in a case where it's sort of like from your side more than their side, it can be challenging because it's, no breakup's easy. It doesn't matter what it looks like.
Yeah.
But if you've created a process that is really impressive, and kudos to you and your team for being able to pull that off and communicate it in a way that people understand.
Yeah, it's the least we can do in that situation, and unfortunately, hard decisions have to be made, and not every circumstance or relationship is going to be that amicable, particularly in a tough situation. But ultimately, we want to make sure that we're going into these types of conversations with grace, with humility, with putting ourselves in the other person's shoes, and on in the way that we would want to be responded to. One of our core values is good neighbor, and we want to treat our neighbors like we treat ourselves. And so that's a big part of our just holistic ethos and philosophy at Full Send.
Yeah, I really love that. Talk us about your second job, which is podcaster, video star, public speaker.
Boy, I've got a number of jobs up my sleeve. Gosh, on the content creation front. So, we connected on LinkedIn, Zane, and this is fruit of the labor of committing to a platform and being consistent with it, which I love. I love being able to point to things like this. But at the beginning of 2023, I committed to posting on LinkedIn every single day. And I didn't have any goals. I didn't have an objective of doing that. I just kind of thought that being consistent would lead to something greater, lead to something good. And it has. Since I have committed to doing that, I have posted consistently throughout 2023, and I'm doing that in 2024. And I now use a bit more framework behind my posts and my strategy there. And to peel back the layer on that a little bit, there are really three things that I look to communicate or I look to achieve through every single one of my posts. And those three things are to educate, to inspire, or to encourage those that are recipients of any content that I put out. And so I'm aiming to achieve one of those three things within the target market of my clients, my potential referral partners, and my industry. And so I kind of have this matrix of how I think about delivering content, and really just committed to being very visible and present and approachable, and will continue to do that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I always love that mantra of yours. And whenever I look at one of your videos, I'm like, is this educating me or inspiring me? Those are always the two I'm looking for. Like 80% of the time it's inspiring me, even though that's probably not the expected outcome, but that's it's doing the job for me. And I do love the way that is your focus. And I do love the way you share the time between helping your clients and helping the accounting industry. I think especially you've been pretty vocal on changes required in the accounting space in a positive way. there are a lot of people out there that are vocal in maybe not the most positive way possible. And I really do appreciate it. I mean, I feel like I don't know enough about the US education system to really give detailed enough comment, but I try to listen to as many people and understand it and, form my own opinions on how things can be fixed. And one of the people I turn to is definitely you. And that's a wonderful resource, just not for me, but for everybody in the accounting industry and a lot of people coming in, because you are doing content in a format that the younger generation are going to turn to, being video. And you do it often and you do it well. And it's always a good, positive message. And it's something I always look forward to.
That means a lot. I have the opportunity to speak at Bridging the Gap, a conference here in several months on the topic of building a next generation culture. And I'm very passionate about trying to send a message that there's so much opportunity in the accounting space that students are unaware of, because really they see 4 firms and they see audit and tax. And so I want to help encourage students and those younger in their career that are on the path of accounting that there's excitement, there's energy, there's new technology, there's a lot happening here. And we really need to buck the trend of how legacy firms and, this old maybe partner model or compensation or 150 hours for CPA exam are really not doing the industry a ton of benefit right now. And so I think there right now is a big grassroots movement amongst all of the firm owners that you and I are connected to help create change in a very positive manner. And I just hope to be a small part of that and help move things forward.
Well, you're doing a great job, and I appreciate it. And I know many other people appreciate it out there. But let's get into some of the sort of meat of the discussion here. You've shared your journey. Can you share with us, at any point in your career, what were the tough moments that you went through? What is one of the most challenging periods of time that you went through that sort of, helped you define who you are and take up this challenge of starting your own firm?
Boy, I think one of the biggest challenges on this journey was it came maybe about 6 months in, where I didn't know what direction I needed to go in order to begin to introduce scalability and hiring people. And I didn't know whether I should, contract hire somebody or full-time hire. I didn't even know the process to do that. And I didn't know if I wanted to have a partner or not. And so it was just tormenting to understand, how do I navigate this next iteration beyond just myself? And what do I want out of it? And one of the quotes and maybe things of inspiration that I go back to is that somebody, and I wish I remember who it was, said something to the effect of, it's better to have a compass than a map. And I was like, light bulbs just went off in my head that I just need to directionally understand where I want to put myself rather than have every step lined up. And that kind of helps me gain some clarity on, okay, there's not as much pressure in this decision as I'm putting on myself, but let's just start taking one step at a time towards a direction that I feel would be fulfilling. And so really that first inflection point was bringing on an initial employee partner, somebody to help grow.
Yeah, that's great. I like to sort of think of it as like rock climbing rather than sort of just a straight race. There's multiple different paths. You know where you want to get to, but the path that you choose is up to you and your strengths and skill sets.
Yeah.
With that in mind, you've been doing this now just over 2 years. You've got a partner, you've got a growing team, doing the content creation. What are your, short-term goals for Full Send?
Well, that's a good question. My partner Stacy and I went through a planning process for 2024 to say, what do we want to accomplish in 2024? What are our 12-month goals? And we realized very quickly, planning in 12-month increments for a small and growing firm is very, very difficult, as our firm has evolved on a month-to-month, on a quarter-to-quarter basis. It has changed a lot. And so when I look at the short-term goals that we've got for the business, it's really a matter of cleaning up our internal processes, our internal nomenclature, our internal data and aggregation of that data so that we can make more effective decisions for the firm, and then process map that to where multiple stakeholders within our service delivery process are aware of what's happening at any point in time. And so that's inclusive of systems, of processes, of documentation, of workflows, of automation. And so that's really the narrow short-term focus right now, is getting our foundations in order.
Yeah, that is one of those processes that you don't think of when you're first starting it out, that you're going to have to do this. And this process you're going through, you're going to probably have to go through it in a few years of time again and again, because as you grow, you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense anymore. But it made sense back then. And it is one of these like housekeeping things that you almost have to, you can almost set a calendar reminder like, hey, it's been 2 years. We better double check that everything's in order and we're happy with the process and everybody agrees that we're still on the same path.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say as it relates to that internal operations side of things, I continually go back to a quote by DJ Patil, who was the chief data scientist for the Obama administration in the White House. And he has a quote that says something to the effect of prototype for one, build for 10x, and engineer for 100x. And so we're building this internal framework for 10x where we are today. To your point, that will change over time, but we're going at it with a mindset of very high degree of scalability.
It's a fantastic approach to it, and I love that as well. I've operated a couple of times in the last few months, which is pretty crazy that it's just shown that the algorithm clearly is working pushing me to one direction at this point as I'm doing a similar process at our company right now. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If I was a new accountant starting out today, what would your advice to me be?
It's very simple. Go build a network, build relationships, put yourself out there. The worst that anybody can ever say is no or not respond to you. If you start to build relationships, the doors that will open for you are beyond anything you can imagine today. And so don't be afraid to take that one step slightly outside of your comfort zone to start meeting new people. Because almost every single one of my roles and all of the people that we've hired have come from some relationship in some form or fashion.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I'll add on to it that learn to have a thick skin, because there are people that are going to say no, and there are people that are just going to ignore you. And honestly, there's probably more of those people than the people that are actually going to take the conversation. At some point, you just realize it is what it is, right? It's not like I'm not going to work with everybody. It's physically impossible. And build that network, develop that thick skin. And who knows, you could be lucky enough to meet famous people like Roman over here. So that's always a benefit.
I do try to respond to every single LinkedIn message I get, outside of the ones that are automated, selling me something, or are just very, very poorly done or worded. I'll respond to all of them.
Yeah, there's definitely those ones where it's clearly a bot trying to get you in to do stuff that you probably should never even be thinking of doing. Kind of those at the moment. Hopefully LinkedIn cleans those ones up. You clearly are a leader in your business. You are the leader in your industry. And being a leader is difficult, and it comes with responsibility. As aspiring leaders listening to this podcast, what would your advice be to them? Help them be better leaders?
That is a loaded question, because there's so many different paths to being a great leader. I think it all comes down to servant leadership, to serving others, to leading with empathy, and with the ability to put yourself in those shoes whom you seek to lead, and really being intentional with your words and your actions on how that will impact the community that you're seeking to impact. Because words matter, actions matter, and more people are paying attention than you think. Sometimes I get caught up in flippantly sending out a post or saying something that, I myself haven't taken enough time to reflect on and be very intentional about. For those individuals that are seeking leadership, to be very intentional and empathetic with how they lead, I think is one of the characteristics that is tremendously difficult to develop over time.
That is great advice. People follow people. And if you can be a person that treats people like people, you've won half the battle right there.
Yeah, that's good.
Roman, you've shared so much with us today. You've been very open with your story. You've provided us with a ton of advice. It would be wonderful if you could just share something with us from a personal standpoint that gives us a bit of insight into who's Roman outside of the world that we see on LinkedIn, not then in the accounting space.
Boy, that's a good question. So outside of the accounting space, at 4:30 or 5 o'clock every day, I close my computer and almost immediately am wrapped up by a 3-year-old son and a 6-month-old daughter. And my hands are in diapers, and they're playing with Legos, and they are running around outside, rolling in the grass and jumping on playgrounds. And it's a very different side of me, the playful dad, than what most people see and perhaps perceive in the accounting community and my clients and things like that. And so, not a lot of people see that. It's a massive part of my life. It's far more important to me than anything I'll ever do in business. So I probably leave it there. The fatherly side of me is one that doesn't get a lot of play, but one that I love that role so dearly, and I'm just trying to hang on to it while the kids are still young.
Being a dad is the greatest job on earth. It's always fun to hear other people enjoying the experience. It's one of my favorite things in life. Always hits me in the heart when people talk about it. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here on Protea Conversations, we love to end off with some rapid fire questions. Are you ready for 5 rapid fire questions?
All right, let's go.
Okay. You're on death row. What is your final meal?
Gosh, pizza.
Any particular type of pizza?
Supreme pizza with a lot of hot sauce.
Do you prefer the mountains or the ocean?
The ocean.
Says the guy who lives in the mountains.
Yeah, right. Naturally.
What is the quality you appreciate in a good friend?
Curiosity.
Do you have a favorite book that you would recommend people should read?
Man, this one caught me off guard. I think Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Points is one that sticks out to me. I really enjoyed that book, Tipping Point.
It's a great read. Last question. If you were stuck on a deserted island, what 3 items would you bring along with you to survive?
To survive? I would bring a saline water distiller, like for clean water, just to survive. I would bring a golf club and a golf ball.
Neat answer for a unique accountant. Roman, I really appreciate your time today. This has been extremely insightful, and I do appreciate every minute you spent with us.
Loved it. This was super fun, Zane. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And with that, we end another Protea Conversations. Thank you for joining us in this journey of learning and inspiration. Today, we've gained insights from our guests and taken another step toward understanding the diverse tapestry of leadership in business and accounting. Remember, each conversation is a step towards the positive transformation of business leaders. We hope our discussions have given you valuable takeaways to apply in your early career in life. Don't forget to subscribe to Protea Conversation on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. We also love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so connect with me on social media channels. I'm most active on LinkedIn and love to you to join the conversation. Join us next time for more engaging stories, advice, and conversations that mattered. Until then, keep striving for excellence and embrace either. Thank you for listening. Be kind and goodbye from Protea Conversations.